各位观众，大家好，周一愉快！今天是3月15号，星期一，我们为大家现场带来 Bc 省的新冠疫情的最新通报。今天早些时候呢 ，Bc 省 Bonnie Henry 和卫生厅联合发布了一个邮件，告诉大家，英国和印度产的阿斯利康都已经到达 Bc 省，从今天开始就已经分发部署到各个地方需要的地方去打疫苗。同时呢，今天从欧洲传来的消息，欧洲从丹麦、挪威、那个荷兰这些1-2个星期前开始暂停。我们中文的有些媒体呢都说是禁用，那么这个是有区别的，英文里边叫 suspended， 暂停英国的阿斯利康。因为最晚的加入这个阵营呢是法国和德国，德国是今天早上宣布暂停使用，那么法国呢是说明天最早明天下午，欧盟的这个健康委员会做出决定，因为现在很多报告是对引起血栓。就像这个疫苗是一个很复杂的因素，到底是疫苗本身引起的血栓，还是在哪些条件下使人引起血栓，都要研究清楚。这个疫苗不是政治，所以不牵涉到政治。我们作为媒体不希望看到任何的中文或者英文对任何产地的疫苗的任何副作用夸大其词。现在人类正需要疫苗的时候，我们不希望某些媒体不负责任，为了博流量也好，为了不可告人的政治目的也好，或者是宣扬自己的疫苗好，打别人贬低别人的疫苗，这些都是不可取的。事实胜于雄辩，不管是中国国产的疫苗也好，还是西方的疫苗，都已经打了上亿了，都没有什么大问题。好，现场已经开始，声音还没有。好，那么先步入的是卫生厅厅长 Andrew Dix， 后面是我们首席官 Bonnie Henry。周五的时候是600多例，今天是周一，看看到底有几例这个是很重要的。
This is the COVID-19 briefing for British Columbia for Monday, March the 15th. We're honored to be here on the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Songhees and the Esquimalt First Nations. Tomorrow, Tuesday, we'll be providing, and Wednesday we'll be providing written briefings around 3 o'clock with relevant information about the COVID-19 pandemic in British Columbia. And now, it is my honor to introduce Dr. Bonnie Henry.
请首席医官 Dr. Bonnie Henry 看看数字是怎么样。
Thank you and good afternoon. Today we're reporting on the last 3 periods. From Friday to Saturday, we had 555 new cases of COVID-19 diagnosed in the province. From Saturday to Sunday, an additional 491 people were diagnosed with COVID-19, and again from Sunday to today, 460 new cases. That gives us a total of 1,506 new cases, including 8 epidemiologically linked cases over this past weekend, bringing our total number of people diagnosed with COVID-19 to 88,373 in British Columbia. Of the new cases, 382 are people who reside in the Vancouver Coastal Health Region. 840 are in the Fraser Health Region, 75 people were on the Vancouver Island Health Region, 80 people in the Interior Health, and 129 people in Northern Health. We now have 4,987 active cases across the province. 269 people are in hospital, 76 in critical care or ICU, and over 9,000 people are now under active public health monitoring, with 81,890 people who have recovered and passed their infectious period. Over this past 3 days, we've had an additional 10 people who've died from COVID-19 in the province, bringing the total number of people who've died from this virus to 1,407. As always, at this point, our condolences are
周
with
五
the
汇报
families,
零
the
零
care
死亡啊，
providers,
这个也是跟大家说一下
the。communities
那
who
么
have
现在
lost
过去3
loved
天，平
ones.
均每天3例多一点。
We've had one new healthcare outbreak
有一
at
个
the
新的
UBC Hospital,
UBC Hospital
and
啊
we now have 6
现在是
active outbreaks in
现在是有
long-term care
6个
and
长期护理
independent
院
living. There's none at the moment
爆发
in assisted
应该说
living,
很少了。
and 8 in different acute care wards. We have one new community outbreak that's been
有一个
reported over the weekend at
有一个
the
社区爆发
Vitrium Glass Group. In addition,
是
there
一
have
个
been
玻璃工厂
163 new confirmed cases that have been identified retrospectively to be variants of concern. So that means of the total we've had in the last few months, 880 of those cases have been people who've been infected with one of these variants.
好，
Of the total cases of variants, 195 are still active cases, and the remaining are past their infectious period. So this includes 818 people who have had the B117 variant, 41 with the B1.351, and 21 with the P1 or Brazil variant. As expected, most of these cases are in the Fraser Health and Vancouver Coastal Health
这些
region,
变异病
681 in
毒主
Fraser
要
Health
还
and
是飞沙和
161
沿
in
岸啊，
Vancouver
我都会把
Coastal,
数字报给
plus
大家。
8 on the Vancouver Island, 23 in the interior, and 1 now confirmed case in the north. From the start of our COVID-19 pandemic, our provincial response has changed and adapted as we've learned.
他说：“我们自从全球流行病以来，我们的相关的疫政策一直在变化，以去适应这个形势。我们还会一直在这么做啊，希望把那个风险最高的地方能够把疫情扑灭下去。”
to manage the
所以我们要，
ever-evolving
其实也就是中
challenges
国
of this pandemic.
可控。
A year ago, our focus was on slowing the
那
spread.
么去年这
And
个
now
时
we
候呢，
have
我们是
3
希望
safe
这个
and effective vaccines
传播速
to
度慢一
protect
点，这个是
people
我们的
here
关
in
注重
British
点。
Columbia
那么
and
现在
across
呢，我们
Canada.
重点是用
With
疫
the
苗保护
majority
人
of
民。
our seniors and elders
那
in
么
care
现在呢是
homes
让
now
老年人
immunized
和
and
这个年
seeing
长
how
者以及
effective that has
那
been.
个长期护理院
Today,
能够有效
our
防
mass
护起来。
clinics for seniors and
那么
elders
今
in the
天呢，现在
community
是很
started
多
off
的
across the
很多的
province.
诊所
And I
全
think
省
this
基
is an
本上都
exciting
可
day
以
for all
啊，
of
这个
us.
都
It's
是
the
接受
start
疫苗
of what is going to be
接种
ramped up
啊，所以
quickly
这个是
over
令
the
人兴
next
奋的。所以
coming
在接
weeks
下来
and
的几
months
个礼
to
拜
be sure
或者
that
几个月里边，
everybody in British
接种
Columbia
疫苗的速
has
度会
access
越来越快
to one of our
啊，
safe
希望
and
大家
effective
我们都会安
vaccines.
全有
To
效的
date,
接受疫苗。
409,103 doses have been provided across British Columbia
哇，40
in
万了
every community in
啊，
this
每一个
province.
社区都开
Of
始打了
those, 87,059 are second doses, and as you know, since we
啊
extended the interval with the
，87,059例呢
knowledge
是
that we
second，
have
那么
of the protection we get from a single dose, that has meant we have now been able to accelerate many of the
啊，那么这个其中呢
immunization
，87,000
activities
大
that
家
we
看
had
到了吗？
started,
就是
and we have
第
accelerated
二
our
例的开
timelines
始
for
越来越少
protecting
了，增
people
长
across
速
the
度慢
province.
了。
One of the important things that we do
那么我
is
们现在
making
需要
sure
重
that we
要的事情
understand the
是我
safety
们，
of every dose that's
那
given
么我
to
们
every
确保
person in
每
this
一个疫
province.
苗都
And
是
we
对
follow
每一个省民
strict
都是安
protocols
全
to
的
identify
啊，
and
所以这是
address
我们
any
很重要
safety
的，希望大
signals
家能够
that show up.
也
And we've
是
heard about
希望每一个
this
工作人
around the
员严
world.
格按照我们的流程。
We report weekly on the adverse effects following
那我们每个星
immunizations.
期都会报告大家这个疫苗的副作用
We look
的
for
更新数
anything
据。
that people might have that
有些人呢
would
会
be,
有一
that
些
could
症
be
状啊，
related
有
to the
可能
vaccine that
是
they
跟
received
症状疫
within
苗
the time
有关的
frame
症状，
after they
但
received
是呢，这
vaccine.
个时间
And we know
常常会
that
消
there are
失。
many events that
啊，
happen
那么我们
on
知
a
道
regular
很
basis
多
every
很
day,
多
whether
的
it's
疫苗
people
每
having
天都在
car
发生，不
crashes,
可
having
能那
heart
么多
attacks,
啊，很
and
多。
sometimes
啊，那么
it'll
有时
happen in
候呢
somebody who， just
在有
happened to have
些
received a
会
vaccine.
有些
So it is
接种的人呢
important
会有
that not
副
only
作
do we
用。
monitor for
所以
all
我
of
们
these
对我们
events,
来讲，我
but
们
we
工作
have a
人员
process
密切
to
跟
see
踪
if
观
the
测
events that
啊接
happen
种疫
are
苗的人
related
这个也是我们的一个处理的方法。
In BC, we've had 469 AFIs that are serious that we've looked into.
我们现在有469个报告案例，那么其中只有46例是一个过敏反应。
That is something that can happen when people are receiving
这个呢是任何疫苗接种的时候都会有副作用的发生所以469例里边46例是真正的副作用反应我们也会都会对每一个人接种的疫苗的批号我们都会有记录跟踪我们都会对每个人的这个疫苗免疫系统以及这个过敏反应都会观测我们也会报告给大家那么在有些国际里边呢已经开始暂停使用阿斯利康的疫苗那么有些因为有些国家已经包括了37例目前为止在一些国家是比较血栓那么我们可能认为是这个跟肺血栓或者是引起心脏的血栓等等我们认为这些可能是正常的因为人数基数大发生这些数字也是正常的但是我们也知道这个也有时候呢有可能是新冠引起的这些症状
have been given.
所以
and so far 37
大家要记住只有1700万支阿斯利康只有37例被发觉这个副作用所以这个比例是很低很低所以请大家千万去放心我们都会在做评估
The World Health Organization, Health Canada is in touch with our counterparts in the UK and in Europe to make sure that we have all of the information about what they're looking at, what lot numbers are involved, what products are involved. And we are confident that that is not a risk that we are seeing here in Canada with the AstraZeneca, the Serum Institute of India vaccine that we have here, the Covishield vaccine, and we'll be watching this very carefully. The other thing that I think is really important is, this shows us that our safety monitoring is working, that we know that certain lot numbers might be more associated with these than others, and that the investigation is happening. But we also remember that every day some people have heart attacks, car crashes, etc. Sometimes these things happen in people who happen to receive immunization, and we monitor to make sure that it's not greater than we might be expected. But we also know that infection with COVID-19 can lead to these types of conditions as well at a much higher rate. We have seen that here in BC, tragically, where we've had even young people have died at home from blood clotting, whether it's a heart attack or pulmonary embolism. And we also know that the vaccines that we have are remarkably effective and safe, and the risk of having the vaccine is dramatically decreased compared to the risk of having COVID-19. There are no safety signals in the UK or in India or in Canada. And the best vaccine that you can take today to prevent you from getting the COVID-19 is the one that you receive first.All of our vaccines are safe and effective. We know as well that vaccine appointments are now open for anyone over age 80, staggered over this week, and Indigenous peoples over age 65. And we've also heard, sadly, that some people are trying to take advantage of older people. And we've heard that there's been some scams that are happening. And I want to remind people, we will never ask you for your credit card information or for any payment. And if somebody does ask you for this type of information, they are not from the health authority. That's not the right number, and you need to hang up.
这个不是我们官方的，我们不需要的。
So as you know, the bulk of our available vaccine, particularly the Moderna and the Pfizer shipments that we are now receiving on a regular basis, is focused on the foundation of our immunization program, and that is our age-based immunization program, starting with those who are most at risk, our seniors and elders. We also, and it's in phase 3 of our plan that we outlined several weeks ago, have a provision for being able to use additional vaccines that are approved, and the first of those has been the AstraZeneca Serum Institute of India COVID-Shield vaccine. And the first shipment that we received last week of this vaccine, about 60,000 doses, is being used right now to help us address community outbreak response. We knew that this was in consultation with my colleagues in public health, using the vaccine to help break chains of transmission in communities, particularly where we are seeing ongoing risk and transmission in clusters and outbreaks in workplaces.
那些地方是高风险的工作场所啊，以及这个零星爆发的社区啊等等这样的话呢是能够使得病毒的传播急速的下降。所以我们接下来的几个礼拜就是重点关注那些工作场所特别是食物加工厂啊，以及这个零售场所啊那些仓库啊等等能够这样的话能够保护每一个人。
Communities around the province, particularly in food processing plants, in agricultural operations with shared accommodations. We've seen outbreaks that have affected not just the camps and the accommodations, but have spilled over into our communities in the large industrial camps, particularly the ones under the PHO industrial camps order with congregate accommodation for workers. And we know that these workers often fly in and fly out, and they can bring risk from the community that they are in when they go into the camp and take risk home with them to places across British Columbia and across this country. Other large congregate living settings as well, where we know isolation and quarantine is difficult and outbreaks are ongoing and they're very challenging to control. So that is what we're targeting last week and this week and for the next couple of weeks with the COVID-Shield vaccine that we have. We know that many of these people who work in these situations are low-wage income, sometimes racialized populations, and it's important for us to be able to keep those workplaces safe for those workers, and we know that that also protects us in the community. And recognize that everybody is eager right now to get their vaccine as quickly as possible, and we will be doing that. It will be available for everyone. Everyone who is immunized also protects the rest of us. And when we immunize to manage these outbreaks that we are having right now, putting out those sparks reduces our community transmission, and that protects us all. And it means that we all move up the line. I also we will also be putting together, we expect to receive more of the AstraZeneca and Serum Institute of India vaccines in the coming months. It has still not been worked out exactly how much we're receiving when, but our BC Immunization Committee and our Public Health Leadership Committee have put together guidance based on the ethical principles on what we have from the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, and in the coming days we'll be presenting this publicly so you will know who the next groups are on this parallel track. So this is for the small amount of vaccine that we have that's different from our main program, which is the age-based immunization program. So those details will be coming soon. As well, I've been reviewing the provincial health officers' orders. As you know, we amended the orders to allow for small outdoor gatherings, and we've started a process led by Dr. Robert Down in November to provide public health and myself with advice and expertise on faith services and religious services around the province. Over the past weeks, we've been working on how we can safely reopen in-person faith services, as I know how challenging it has been for many people not to be able to congregate with those who are in their faith community.
使得大家能够聚集，安全的聚集，特别是宗教场所。那么我们也鼓励都要是在允许在室外能够做一些宗教的活动。我们也是跟很多的各界的宗教团体以及因为在接下来呢会有耶稣受难日和复活节等重大的宗教活动。所以我们现在也会跟 Dr. Dong 一起讨论如何室外措施安全有效情况下，在开展室内的慢慢放松的这些聚集。我们这个计划呢也会马上会出来，会报给大家，请大家耐心。所以现在是满怀的希望但是呢也是谨慎小心的时候，我们一定要控制好不要让社区再爆发那么有些社区爆发的时候会传染给其他的社区，所以有些社区的风险很高，高到我都不愿意现在再这么提出来太高了风险。所以我们也在积极的购买疫苗采购疫苗，所以我们在每个人做每个人该做的事该做每个人应做的事情。
And by that, right now, it's focusing on what we can do together in small numbers outdoors.
所以现在呢，室外请大家还是小规模的人员聚集。
To protect those
所以你每个人都从现在开始做
means we need to stay outside and continue with our safety precautions.
那么就是10个人10个人在室外可以10个人那么请大家还是要注意安全，注意各种防护措施有足够的空间，因为我们现在还是处在疫情当中，我们还没有结束，所以我们还有很多的这个风险，所以我们还有很多的动力，使得我们要朝着这个免疫的方向去走。所以大家一定要相互的分享这个保护措施、保护的经验我们每一个人相互帮助、相互提醒能够使得我们进一步的建立起团结的力量，去抵御这个病毒那么卫生厅长来了，他总结一下，可能是。今天是礼拜一，我们省的这个个人防护服、口罩、手套、消毒液的采购情况。那么现在先说一下，过去3天里边死亡10个人的表示诚挚的哀悼。
And linked to being tested positive to COVID-19. And it happened everywhere in BC. 3 were in Fraser Health, 2 in Interior Health, 1 in Northern Health, 4 in the Vancouver Coastal Health Authority. A reminder of the enduring pain caused by this pandemic and the need to support one another in these very, very difficult times. We are never, I don't think a day passes, we're not reminded by somebody of the impact of and the challenges of grieving in these times, and we are thinking of all of these families, of the caregivers, of the communities who've been affected by these losses throughout the pandemic and this weekend as well. As you know, as Dr. Henry has said, 269 people are currently in hospital diagnosed positive for COVID-19. Just to put that in context, over the last week there have actually been more hospital beds available than there had been in the week precedent. There are 9,374 base beds in our acute care settings in BC. 90.8% of those are full. To put that in context, in previous years that number would be over 100%
从今天的数字来看这个重症监护本来是60几个，一直是60几个，2月16号74个，2月23号69个，3月2号就是63个，3月4号63个，3月8号66个，3月11号是68个，今天是76个，住院也是增加了，244个变成269个了。这个2月16号住院才231个，所以这个有点都是维持在230、240，突然之间269个了。那么他还说了这个病床的占用情况，也就是我们医疗资源。
Non-urgent scheduled or elective surgeries in BC, And on that day, we'll be providing and we'll be making available reports laying out the effectiveness and what's happened with the surgical renewal plan in the year since then. So that will be Friday. I want to acknowledge with some joy that we're down to 3 long-term care outbreaks, 2 in Interior Health and 1 in Fraser Health. And considering that 2 months ago on January 15th, we had 42 long-term care outbreaks, this is a significant achievement of all of those who've made the effort to assist in immunizing staff and residents and many essential visitors in long-term care and assisted living. No assisted living outbreaks, 3 independent living outbreaks, all in Fraser Health. That reflects, I think, good news about the vaccine and what it's done in one part of BC, and the hope that we'll be able to see some continuing restoration of a more normal situation in our long-term care homes very soon. Yesterday, we announced that we were moving up the appointment booking in British Columbia, that we were adapting and accelerating that booking across BC. So today, as you know, at noon, people born in 1937 or above, aged 84, are allowed to start booking their appointments starting at noon. Noon tomorrow, that will be people aged 83, born in 1938 or before. On Wednesday, it'll be people aged 82, born in 1939 or before. On Thursday, people age 81, born in 1940 or before, and on Friday it'll be people aged 80, born in 1941 and before. More than 10,000 people booked their appointments this morning in BC before it opened to the new cohort, and we're expecting a significant increase in the number of people booking appointments when we report on that at the end of today. I just want to note, Dr. Henry and I, in a statement earlier today, talked about how we were deploying the first amount of AstraZeneca we've received in British Columbia, and some of the steps we're using to use vaccine to deal with transmission in community beside our age-based approach. And all of you know,
所以他也是在重
with our
新
vaccine
强调了一
campaign, we
遍
said we'd start with the most vulnerable
阿斯
and
利
those
康
who
的
care
疫
for
苗
them,
如
and
何
then
使
move
用
down through age groups
主要
with
是用在
science
哪
and
里
our experience
也
with
就是用
COVID-19.
在这些
So
工作
that
场
was the
所
right
啊
thing to
高
do.
风险的
That
社
is
区
what
啊
we're doing
同时呢
right
再
now.
给
And when our
年
supply
龄
was
为基
lesser
础的人
in the
群
month
打
of
给
January,
社
we
会上的
adapted
年
to
龄人
make sure
去
we
打
did not
这
waver.
个是再说
I
明
think
说
British
明一下
Columbians understand this
那么
and
现在
support
呢
this.
开始接受
And
80
whether
岁
it's
以上的
vaccines
老
to
人
Prince Rupert
以及
with a
原住
significant
民
community outbreak,
65岁
or
以
to
上人
workplaces
预
anywhere
约
in BC
那
where
么
case
他
numbers are high
其
and
实
threaten
我再
local,
更正一
regional,
下
or
啊
provincial safety.
那么
Our
微
BC
信里
way
边
is to
到处在
support
传一
this
张时
targeted
间
effort.
表，说
And
3
I
月
think
15
British
号以
Columbians
后接
understand
受
and
1931
support
年
this
以
as
前
well.
出生的人，
Let's
其
be
实
clear.
这个
Everyone,
这个时间表是
everyone
错
in
的，
BC
请大家
is
不要再传
essential in
了
our。BC
3月
pandemic. From our
提前了一
individual
个礼
action
拜，
to
3月
stop the
8
spread,
号 那
right through to
那
our
一周
collective
已经
action
开始
to
接受
ensure that
90 岁
everyone who
以
needs
上
a
老人
vaccine
的
gets one,
预约
and that
疫
everyone
苗
who
了
wants a
啊。那么
vaccine
这个
has
礼拜
one.
开始呢
From
是
the
接
start,
受
we've
80
been
岁以
guided by
上的
our
老人的
commitment
预约了
that。those who need it most
那
are
么
the
他也
highest
是
priorities
伯
for
尼医生
all
再
of
次
us.
请求大
And we
家
will continue
不
to
要
uphold
再
that principle.
提前1-2
And
天，
I
比如
don't
说这个
just
老
think
人
British
是
Columbians support
89
this.
岁或者
I
80
know
岁啊
they，do.
他上周六
Just
就
to
去
say
预约了
finally
啊，这个
that
是
this
浪
weekend
费
was a
时
bit of
间
renewal.
浪费
Clocks,
资源，
setting clocks
所以这
forward
个也
gave
是
us
希
more
望
light in the evening
能
and
够
the
按照时
opportunity
间
to
严
take
格。
advantage and the encouragement from public health from Dr. Henry to go outside, I think, raised our spirits.
所以他也是说到了这个，希望大家能够室外去室外，因为现在就室外的禁令有所放松，所以这样的话呢，也是大家引起足够的精神，能够鼓励大家能够往外走。
The second is the reality that COVID-19 remains everywhere
所
in
以也请
BC.
大家面对现实，即使是疫苗来了啊，虽然很多时候对大家来讲很难，但是大家再坚持啊，我们一定要面对病毒正确面对。
The ability to gather outdoors in groups up to 10, the same 10, is an important step in our BC pandemic, and we all make outdoor gatherings for up to 10 people safe by keeping tight with the trusted 10 we're part of.
所以现在是
some positive news
这个卫生厅长始终说了 10 safe 10 safe 就是安全 10就是10个人，反反复复说了10个人，就是大家记住了，不是室内了，室外是10个人啊，这个稍微松了一松，所以希望大家还是要遵守这个各种各样的卫生禁令这个措施该有的还有不要放松。
soit celle du 12 et 13 mars, celle du 13 et 14 mars, et celle du 14 jusqu'au 15 mars, en mi-journée. Il y a eu 10 nouveaux décès liés au Covid-19 durant ces périodes de référence. Nous offrons nos condoléances aux familles et aux amis des 1407 personnes décédées de Covid-19 et à tous ceux qui ont perdu leurs proches au cours de cette pandémie. Pour la première période de référence qui s'étend jusqu'au 13 mars, nous avons eu 555 nouveaux cas. Pour la deuxième période de référence, nous avons eu 491 nouveaux cas. Au cours des dernières 24 heures, 460 nouveaux cas se sont ajoutés. Parmi l'ensemble des cas confirmés de COVID-19, 269 personnes sont actuellement hospitalisées, dont 76 en soins intensifs. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. We're happy to take your questions.
Thank you, Minister. As a reminder to everybody on the phone line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You're limited to one question and one follow-up only. I would also ask that you please remove yourselves from mute. You are not audible until your name is called. First question today is from Rob Shaw, Check News. Rob, are you there?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. To Dr. Henry, I was hoping you could talk about the...
I think we lost you, Rob. Okay, we'll come back to Rob. Let's move on to Richard Zussman, Global News.
For both Dr. Henry and Adrian Dix, there's been a lot of frustration over the weekend. I'm sure you've heard around Pfizer being used from some larger companies and workplaces here in BC, including now a cabinet maker. Can you explain why these companies are being prioritized with
好，这个问题好问题啊！他说周末听到了一些令人沮丧的事情，也就是说那些大公司啊都优先使用了辉瑞。现在看来，辉瑞疫苗大家放心一点啊，都是大公司在用啊。那么这个是令人有点沮丧。那么其他你用了，其他人就没用了，那么怎么办啊？这些请他解释一下。
I would hope not. I don't think anybody wants to get sick with this virus. And it is a reality that we have been focusing on outbreaks in our communities. And we used the vaccine that we have available. We used it to manage outbreaks that we had in correctional facilities, for example, to manage outbreaks that we've had in certain areas. And these the businesses are closed down when they have an outbreak to make sure that we are able to effectively isolate people. All of those other things are in place as well. But what we have learned from some of these larger workplaces, particularly we've seen this repeatedly with some of the food processing plants, and a number of those were workplaces that vaccination was one of the part of the outbreak control measures. So yes, we do close them down. Yes, we do make sure that people are isolated, that they're tested, that they have to stay home, that their family and their close contact are isolated as well. But we now have another tool that we now know is effective in helping us prevent that ongoing transmission that happens in families and communities and back and forth into the workplace. And so those have been prioritized and will continue to be prioritized with the vaccine now that we have from the AstraZeneca, because it's much more flexible. We're able to keep it in the fridge and use it in smaller amounts, but we needed to take the actions that we've been doing in various outbreaks around the province since we've had vaccine available, but only since we've had enough available that we've been able to focus on some of those smaller clusters and outbreaks as well. So it is part of our public health response to putting out the community outbreaks. It's not about prioritizing one specific industry, it's about addressing the outbreaks and clusters that are ongoing in our communities now that lead to that extra layers of transmission. And we're going to see more of that. That is what we're using this alternate or parallel track for, to best protect and stop transmission in the community. And we'll be having more details about that. But right now, that means looking at some of those industries where we have ongoing repeated transmission events and outbreaks that are making people sick, that they're bringing home, that they're taking, that people are ending up in hospital, and where workplaces are very challenging to make safe. So we do
所以
all
他
of
说
those
对
things
这
in
些
those
工作场
workplaces.
所要保证他
Richard,
们
do you have a
安全的话，对我们来讲的确是困难很大。所以他再三解释了一下，也就是为什么优先次序在这个疫苗优先次序方面是考虑到这些大型的公司的工作场所，因为他说有些工作场所，特别是食物加工厂、水果加工厂反反复复已经几次了。
Is there's been some confusion about whether that means people can go.
那么这个再问就是室外，特别是这些patio 大家的阳台啊，或者是后院啊，这些能不能做这些集会的事情啊？
They certainly can gather outdoors, but the same, and I emphasized this last week, the same restrictions are in place in bars and restaurants and pubs.
对这个酒吧以及因为很多酒吧都有10个室外，这个只要是酒吧、餐厅、餐饮的都是6个人，这个是一样的，这个没有变过，这些禁令是一样的。卫生场所，这个如果你你就算你餐厅有这个露天的平台的
going skating with some friends in the north right now. I know it's still cold up there. Then limit your group to 10.
那么但是呢，如果你们是朋友，你们要比如说去滑雪啊、滑冰啊，那么就会是10个人。但对餐厅、酒吧就算你有室外的阳台，也是6个人，这个不会变。我觉得这个是对的。你能保证你一定在室外有位置吗？对吧？这个是一样的。
that are operating using COVID safety plans, where there is an ongoing risk in the workplace to workers in those settings. And we have done a lot of analysis of those settings, and there are some where it's more challenging. There's larger numbers of people. It's more challenging for the COVID safety plans to be adhered to, and it has effects on worker safety that reflects into our communities. And so that's why we're focusing on the ones that we know need to stay open, the agricultural, where we're in group living accommodations, where there's the food processing plants, some of the light industrial plants are important, some of the manufacturing where there's larger numbers of people and workers where it can spread very easily, and some of the mail depots and distribution centers as well. So it is where outbreaks are happening in our community right now. Everybody is essential, we know that.
Okay, we are going to go back to Rob Shaw. Go ahead, Rob.
There, but Dr. Henry, I wanted to ask you about the decision to bump up for the second time the age cohorts yesterday. Is there a ripple effect of that extends to the other ages that were outlined on March the 1st when he gave us a list of
那么他是说到老人的问题，因为孩子们都有cohort，就是固定的这些人群。那么他说老年人根据年龄划分也是固定的人群 cohort。那么是不是现在也改了？有些人那么他说是的，因为现在
as best we can make it easier for people as we're getting our clinics up and running.
我们也是让大家能够尽量的服务大家。
now are ones that will be expanding as we go down the age cohorts. We're talking about larger and larger groups of people. So this has been our way to try and ramp it up in a way that's effective and make sure that people get what they need in terms of access to the clinics. And yes, we will be ramping up and increasing the other age groups as soon as we are able to.
bc.com 是 BC 省的一个最重要的、最知名的中文门户网站之一。那么 BCBay.com 呢，也在 YouTube 上呢开了一个叫港湾 TV， 那每天呢给大家提供港湾播报，也就是大温关注大温，关注加拿大的、关注世界的一个新闻播报。那么每周呢，只要 BC 省有新冠疫情的新闻简报，我们也会及时为大家转播。
vaccine in this period between March 15th and March 31st, so we have to adapt to that to ensure that we're getting vaccine into people's arms as fast as we can. We're actually expecting in the last week in March to receive just somewhat more vaccine than the next week in April. So when we see opportunities to accelerate, we want to accelerate and set appointments, and that's precisely what we're doing. And in the case of today, for example, everyone 84 who is at least 84 years of age, born in 1937 or before, are able to sign up now for appointments. The idea is that we're going to have to, throughout this process, continue to adapt, and our expectation is that, unlike in January, most of that adaptation is going to be to accelerate the opportunity for people to get their vaccination. So that's what's happening now, and it's really positive. I think it's positive that we're, instead of going 85 to 89 today, we're moving on through this week so that people down to the age of 80 will know when they're going to get their vaccinations.
Follow-up, Rob?
Sure, thanks. I guess I'd just like to ask about, are you worried about any confusion, given that we've gone from very specific dates just a couple of weeks ago to now a week in which, you know, if you're 83 or 84 or 82, you have a different day to potentially open up? And then also, if I sneak in another question there, can you continue to bump things up without an online booking system, or do we hit a kind of age cohort where you need that online backup to handle the demand of people?
那也是说到了原来的预约问题，有些人是说他是说那个这个慢慢开放，比如说80岁以上，那么现在有时候是选择这个85岁以上还是84岁、83岁这个慢慢预约，比如说先预约85岁的，然后才接受84岁的。那么他也是说到了这个，因为我刚才也在看到了一个网友说他替他家老人预约在飞沙卫生局，他不知道飞沙呢是卫生局呢是可以网上预约的。那么现在呢，电话是跟他说是现在是85岁以上的人，85岁以下的呢可能要过1-2天才能预约。当然，这个都是根据疫苗的分发的情况啊，疫苗到户呢，他也是说到了。那也就是这个伯尼医生刚刚说到了这个问题啊，我们联邦政府在积极的全球采购疫苗啊。那么几个星期前我们都不知道现在有那么多的疫苗啊，我们所以没办法这么具体细节。那么现在呢，现在慢慢我们都开始具体化了，因为疫苗越来越多来了。
Good news for us, and what we need to do is adapt to try and use that up and get vaccine into arms as quickly as possible to as many people as possible. So I think it is important for us to speed things up as we can. We are being very cautious because we have seen, as the minister mentioned, we've seen before where vaccine shipments have been delayed for reasons that we don't know, and of course we were a little gun-shy through much of February.
大家都知道，因为到2月份的时候，疫苗延迟了，那么到货很有限，那么所以，但是呢，现在我们也越来越有信心了啊，我们开始收到越来越多的疫苗到货了啊，这个是好消息，所以也是我们每个人的努力分不开，每一个努力都分不开。
provincial online process that everybody can use, and the target for that is still, unfortunately, a few weeks away. But we want to make sure that it works and it works well. And these things, for anybody who's developed an IT system like this that has to be interoperable with many other systems, and most importantly, from my perspective, is it gets everybody's information into our provincial immunization register. So one, you have a record, we have a record, so some point when you need that record. But also really importantly, that's our safety monitoring system as well. So yes, we're trying to speed things up as much as we can, and that is something that we're working very hard on, and we're going to be test driving in the next little while, and it will be ready to go once we get into our major cohorts of 70 and above. So probably not until April. So we're going to have some combinations before we get to that.
Next question is from Marcella Bernardo, News 1130.
Hi, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix. I'm hoping to ask you to clarify more about what's happening with religious groups because
他请他再讲一下宗教团体的聚集情况，因为刚才说了这个室外这个小型的
religious services. If you could just clarify what the timeline is.
Yeah, so we are working with Rabbi Dome has a panel, if you will, of different faith leaders who have been so helpful. It's like each of the other sectors that we worked in. So with sport, we had via sport and representatives from different sports to help us develop the guidelines for how we can have sport reopening. And that's coming as well in April. So there's three things that we are looking at in the last couple of weeks through this process with Dr. Dome. One is about outdoor services. And so we have come up with some guidelines for outdoor services, and we'll be looking at putting a class variance, it's called, in the next couple of days, that with the guidelines for how safe outdoor services can be held for religious groups who want to do that. And let me make this very clear, and I've heard this from many faith leaders, that they understand that we're still in a very precarious situation. And some communities absolutely are not yet ready to have in-person services. And some communities, it can be done perfectly safely. So these are the things that we are putting in place with their advice. The second one is around the important holidays. So we know that for Christians, Easter, and for people of the Jewish faith, that Passover are two very important holidays that are coming up at the end of this month. So we have been consulting through this process to see how we can have some limited in-person gatherings for those very important celebrations and do that safely. And again, it will depend. I've heard from the leaders in those communities that some churches or synagogues are finding other ways to have those services, but for some it will be very important to have some limited indoor access for those important celebrations, and we're looking at how we can do that, and we'll have guidance on that, I'm hoping early next week for people. And then finally, we're using the process to help understand how we can have a phased, safe reopening to in-person religious services across the board over the next few months. And the target for that, based on the advice that we'll be getting in the next few weeks, I'm hopeful that we're looking at some time in the middle of April. So those are all flexible,
所以但是呢这些都是灵活的，都是要可能改的，因为这个都是需要大家的投票以及这个其他因素，包括我们这个整个公共卫生的状况，以及社区里边病毒的传播的状况，还有我们如何的利用这个目前的医疗资源，以及社区爆发以及零星爆发传染的情况。还有疫苗的情况，所以所有的这些因素，在接下来还会都一系列的事情、一系列的措施、一系列的开放，都是根据这些具体的所有的因素综合起来考虑，慢慢开放。
Access to a letter about CISA, independent school administrators, being told that they need to fall within provincial guidelines, and a lot of people have misinterpreted that, or may not have misinterpreted that, to mean that if you have mandatory masks in schools right now, you're not encouraged to do that. So can you clarify, yes or no, if people are administrators of these independent schools are now being told that they are not allowed to make masks mandatory if they believe that that is a good safety measure to implement?
那么对私立学校的口罩的强制问题，请你澄清一下，因为你没有说，他说这个口罩呢是对所有的学校，不管是公立还是私立学校，都是建议以及行为指南要求大家戴的。
All people in the school community, and that includes provisions for mask wearing. So there is mask mandates in the public health guidance, and then each school district, each school allows the operational pieces in place using those guidelines. So we have public health guidance, and then there's Ministry of Education directives that are based on the public health guidance, and those are enforced in the schools with a partnership between the school district, the school principal, and the school health officer in that area.
Next question is from Binder Sajan, CTV.
所以他也是说到了，不管你是公立还是私立，他的命令这个学校的口罩不是强制的，这个是一个，也就是说戴口罩是一个建议啊，没有说强制，这个是公立私立都一样的。
But I think your modeling presentation on Thursday indicated maybe dozens of cases. So are you able to just clarify how many cases did the survey actually uncover? If there's a discrepancy, why that is, and if there's anything that you would have done differently.
Yeah, so there was 2 phases to that. One of them was a screening test, and the screening test looked for a specific mutation, the N501Y, and there was about 30, so about 1%.
如果你们现在这个调查酸材和跟模型的分析如果有区别的话，那么你们的政策如何调整？
So it was slightly higher, and then we've added
所以他说现实的情况可能还会稍微高一点点。
tests in there, so
因为现在对
we're now
这个变异病毒都是酸茶。
New cases are at least screened positive as a variant, and then go on for whole genome sequencing. So we have seen an increase, but I can give you the details of the specific 3,099, and there was about 30 and then 3 that were positive, and then whole genome sequencing of additional ones that identified a few more, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can get you those details.
Binder, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. And this is for a colleague of mine. What would be the harm in pausing the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine until, the link to blood clots has been absolutely ruled out? And does the fact that many of these doses are set to expire April 2nd play into the decision to carry on with vaccination rather than suspending it?
Yeah, so I think we,
很多人呢，第一针打了，他们第二针呢到4月2号就结束了，要过期了。那么阿斯利康现在都暂停了，那么都跟血栓有关系。如果阿斯利康真的是没有的话，那么你们怎么考虑怎么处置？所以我们都会每一个人打的批号，我们都会有这个记录。那么我们会根据相同的批号、相同的这个给大家打第二针。因为英国同行提供了很多给我们交流了很多的信息。我们现在没有看到在加拿大没有看到这个血栓的情况。
Small number of events associated with the AstraZeneca product that was used in Europe.
它就算在欧洲其实也是很少的案例。
But we also don't believe that
there's
an underlying reason why it would be associated with those, and the investigation is ongoing.
所以现在调查也在进行，积极调查当中啊。我们不是很认为这些血栓案例直接跟这个疫苗有关联啊。因为伯尼医生说了，就算不打这个疫苗，每天血栓、心脏病发生的案例不知道多少啊。有些正好是碰巧打了这个疫苗发生了，所以他就认为不是。他还是很乐观的。那么也就是前几天我们的联邦的医官谭永诗医生他说我就带头打阿斯利康。这个是说过了。
We have time for one more question. For everyone listening, Dr. Henry and Minister Dix will release a statement this afternoon with the latest information on cases, hospitalizations, and outbreaks, which you can find at news.gov.bc.ca. For updated province-wide restrictions, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID restrictions. And for information about the province's orders and pandemic supports, visit gov.bc.ca/COVID-19. Last question today is from Tanya Fletcher, CBC.
Dr. Henry, documents show Canada is about to change its guidelines on the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine and recommend it be given to those over the age of 65. Does that mean seniors in BC could also be offered it, especially if AstraZeneca shipments pick up, or will it continue to only serve that parallel track and not merge into the age-based system?
好，那么我们可能又改了这个阿斯利康的政策，可能可以给65岁的人以上的人也可以打了。你们就看看，这个我也是第一次听到，因为原来说65岁以上的人，阿斯利康好像原来说是不建议打。所以阿斯利康他说跟这个辉瑞啊、莫德纳还不一样，他们比较灵活储存啊，还有打。因为我们原来一直在听Bonnie Henry 的讲话啊，知道这个辉瑞是最不灵活的，他一盘打出来拿出来一定要打掉的，那一盘可能就几百只。那么莫德纳好一点，那现在阿斯利康呢，现在储存啊、运输啊以及这个包装啊都更灵活。那么他说英国对阿斯利康的这个苏格兰对阿斯利康疫苗的，还有印度啊，他们都在使用大量的阿斯利康啊，他们会有很多的数据都证明了这个对老年人是安全的，所以我们认为这个我们也可以改。
Is there concern that once the entire town of Prince Rupert is vaccinated, for example, that people might be less careful in terms of masking and gatherings, etc.? What's your message to people living there?
Yeah, I think there are many communities now around the province where First Nations communities, some of the smaller communities where it doesn't make sense to go back multiple times. We all need to recognize that right now we still have a lot of transmission of this virus, and the vaccine is not 100%. So we need to be respectful of each other. It does mean that after, particularly 2 to 3 weeks at least, we know that the effectiveness of protection goes up quite dramatically. So we need to keep things in place, particularly if we're around somebody who is older, who has immune-compromising conditions, more at risk for severe COVID. We need to continue to use our protections until we're all at that place. But we do know now, we're learning as we go with these vaccines, that 3 to 4 weeks after our immune system is able to build up that response, we are able to,
人体的免疫系统都构建完了，对这个病毒有效的建立起防御体系了。
We've learned that through this pandemic.
所以我们已经从这个全球流行病里面学了很多了。
And we bring the risk back from where we've been. So it is not, we're not safe until we're all safe.
所以我们不安全，只有到大家都安全的时候，我们才安全。所以我们还是要在接下来几个月里边要小心要保护更多的人，在全省还是要保护不是说就放松了。这个是反反复复说了，特别是老年人打完针了没事了，其实不一样的他也是说了，伯尼说了，这个打完了之后呢，几个礼拜以后，身体里边的免疫系统才积极防疫起有效防疫起来。那么各位观众，这个呢就是今天的这个新闻简报我再把数字报给大家一下。那么今天呢是3天的这个。今天是3个周期给大家汇报，周五到周六新增了是551例，周六到周日是491例，周日到周一是新增了460例，3天一共1506例，累计总数现在 BC 省到了88373例了。那么沿岸卫生局是382新增，飞沙卫生局新增840例，岛上卫生局新增75例，北部卫生局新增129例，内陆卫生局新增80例。在目前为止 active case 里边有269例在住院，其中76个在重症监护这个数字是相对来讲是高的。那么在过去它这个因为对这个变异病毒呢，是过去所有的阳性案例都去筛检基因检测，所以呢现在报的数字呢，目前为止是新发现了106例，过去3天是变异病毒。那么目前为止 BC 省总共累计变异病毒是880例，目前为止195例变异病毒还是在活跃着案子，那么其他的都痊愈了。在这个880例里边，变异病毒里边 英国病毒是818例，41例是南非病毒，接下来都是巴西病毒。在过去的3天里边呢，累计的死亡是10例。不过我再强调一下，周五的简报是在周五到周四这个24小时里边是0死亡，这也是值得纪念的，因为从去年的第2波以来到现在为止几乎天天有，就昨天就周四到周五，上周四到上周五是没有零死亡。那么在这个到目前为止呢，全省一共有409103人打了疫苗，其中87059人是打了第2针。从这个礼拜开始呢，是接受80岁以上老人预约打疫苗，请大家积极的去打。那么我刚才在微信里边，因为不好意思，因为我同时在看一看，掌握一下情况。有朋友呢，他的父母是80岁以上了已经接受打了。那么一个是莫德纳，一个是辉瑞。但是呢，这个伯尼医生也刚才在答记者问的时候呢，也提到了阿斯利康只要是被证明65岁以上老人行之有效的。那么现在看来呢，似乎是验证了这个结论。那么 BC 省可能也会，加拿大也会建议60岁以上老人也可以打阿斯利康疫苗。但是呢，现在呢，伯尼 Henry 呢，始终强调阿斯利康这次到货的是印度产的呢，是会重点部署在这些工作场所，特别是高风险的，已经发生过几次的这类高风险的工作场所，比如说食品加工厂、禽肉加工厂、水果加工厂等等等等这些工作环境。我再强调一遍，非沙卫生局电话预约以外，还有网上预约，其他的沿岸卫生局、岛上卫生局、北部卫生局和内陆卫生局，目前为止只接受电话预约。好了，各位观众，今天的 BC 省新冠疫情的新闻简报就为大家转播到这儿，我们本周四下次再会。